Welcome to Zen Summer, where we talk about healthy living, mind, body, and spirit. So today we're going to be talking about expectations. It's really important that we set standards and boundaries and know our own value. It's important to know what we will and won't accept in a partner, a friend, in the people that we allow close to us. But sometimes we can set our expectations too high, and that can trip us up. I know a few times where it's kind of sent me spiraling and not been able, because I've not been able to meet or realize the expectations, or because other people couldn't meet or realize the expectations that I was putting on them. So
Yes.
I feel like it's, I think people get confused when it comes to expectations. It is important to have knowledge of what your values are, to know that I have an expectation that, and sometimes I have to just communicate that, but I have an expectation that people are going to have a certain type of behavior. Maybe I'm not okay with uh, a certain type of language. Not that I have any problem with curse words, because apparently I swear like a sailor, but maybe that is my problem. And other people don't know that. And so I have to communicate that to them. Now, after I've
Yes.
communicated that to them, if they step through, that's a boundary, it's an expectation. If they step past that boundary, if they don't come up to that expectation, I have to decide how I'm going to handle that.
Right. Well, I think it's important to evaluate why you have an expectation. It could be any expectation and it could be of others, but it also, I think, more importantly, should be of yourself. First and foremost, what is it that you are willing to do to pursue a dream, to pursue an education? Maybe it's a career, maybe it's childcare and you want to raise a family. Maybe it's farming. Maybe it's not even necessarily a thing that you do. Maybe it's meditating. Anything in life requires a certain set of expectations. I think a lot of people like to pretend that these expectations don't exist as you get older, but in reality, they still do. When you leave the house, you have to, behave in society as a civil human. Otherwise, you get removed from it. Those are rules and expectations and boundaries that society has placed on itself to make sure that things work the way that they're supposed to.
So I guess I would ask, how do we know when we are setting our expectations too high? What's the sign to
Well,
us that we may have put too much of an expectation on something?
see, that's a hard question, but I think
I'm so good at
if you,
those.
right, yes, you are. They're amazing because they really, they make you think critically about complex situations. So I think the way that I would answer that is, at least from my own opinion and perspective, I should preface all of this with that. I think when you set your expectation to a point or level that you yourself know that you cannot meet, that expectation is too high, whether it be for yourself or others. You have to set reasonable goals for yourself, which means you have to first and foremost know what it is that you're capable of doing. Now, from an exercise perspective, it could be 4 or 5 push ups, and maybe that's all you can do that day. But in a few days, try 6 or 7. It's consistency and repeated practice that makes a difference in anything that you do in life.
Well, I
You
think
just get better at it the more you do it and the more time that's passed.
I do think that we are definitely harder on ourselves than we are on others, almost always. Um, and I do think it's important to be very realistic in setting your own standards for yourself, to set your goals for You said exercise because I know that's something near and dear to you. But for example, for decluttering my house, we talked about that last week. I I have to set reasonable goals. I can't do the whole house in one day, even though it's only a 36-foot RV. You would not believe how hard that actually is. And I have chronic pain conditions that keep me from being able to do all of that at once. I don't have enough spoons for that. So
Right.
I have to go, okay, what can I reasonably do today? Today I woke up, my back was hurting a little bit. I needed to get a few things done. I can't stand at the kitchen sink today, so I can't do the dishes today. Thankfully, I have a husband who is kind enough to do that when I can't. But I could do the laundry. That was a reasonable expectation for me. I was able to put things in the wash, take them out, hang them up, not using the dryer in 108-degree weather, which is what it is here in Texas right now. But
Phew.
yeah, but I can set the reasonable expectations. There's another thing. When you wake up in the morning and it's terribly humid, and I know you live in an area that it can be really humid.
Oh yeah.
So if it's very hot and humid, you can't expect yourself to go jog a mile, even if you jog a mile every other day, because you might die. I'm just saying.
Well, I think you need to be careful in every aspect of life, or cautious at least.
I think I think breaking down goals into smaller, more easier steps is one thing that you can do.
Manageable.
Manageable
Yeah.
steps is one thing that you can do. Recognizing limitations like the heat, like the humidity, like the sun glaring down on the top. Oh my goodness, the sun is so bad out here. It's like, I know it's the same sun
Uh,
everywhere, but it does not feel like the same sun. I'm just saying.
right? Feels like you're elevated on a plateau that's just
Oh,
somehow closer to it.
it's so bad. But recognizing those limitations, that's another way. Also, I have found that sometimes it's just a matter of trial and error. Like, if I set
Yes.
an expectation and I realize later that I am extremely disappointed in myself, others, the situation, whatever, maybe my expectation was too high and I need to reevaluate it. And there's nothing wrong with
Right.
reevaluating.
No, I think it's necessary actually. Because we're going to fail, you know? That's kind of the sooner you take that in as part of growth, the easier it is to deal with when it happens. Because it's going to happen. Nobody's perfect. And the you should spend less time worried about what's perfect or what's seen or perceived as perfect, and more time understanding what makes you happy, what helps you to feel fulfilled in life, what you're interested in, what you like to talk about, what you want to do with your free time, what you gravitate towards, or the type of people you gravitate towards in life. But I think some of that is meant, these people are meant to teach you something, whether it be to, you need to set a boundary, you need to set an expectation with this person because they're going to cross it and it's not okay. And you may need to cut some people out of your life to be able to live more peaceably. But this is, this is all part of the learning process. So practice is
So
essential.
boundaries and expectations are kind of two sides of of the same coin, because you can have expectations and realize that I I expect people in my life to behave a certain way. Now, sometimes that has put me over the edge and the expectation has been too high and I've had to adjust that expectation. But sometimes those expectations are to protect ourselves. I expect the people in my life not to take advantage of me.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a terribly high expectation. That should be a normal expectation. I expect the people in my life to be able to take care of themselves. I can help you if you need help, but I expect you to be able to manage your life on your own first. Those aren't high
Absolutely.
expectations. And the boundary is where I'm going, okay, so I have this expectation that you can take care of yourself. Now we're friends, and you call me and say, hey, listen, I don't usually ask, but everything went sideways, and can I borrow $30 because this, or this? Now the
Hmm.
boundary comes with, am I willing to allow that? So in your case, in our case, I would say, of course, let me loan you the $30. If you call me and say, can I borrow 3,000, you may have crossed a boundary. So you have to figure out where those boundaries are and what's okay for any relationship that you have. The expectation, you can take care of yourself. You do that. The boundary is when you can't, because we all need help sometimes.
Yes.
When you can't, what is the willingness here, and what do I say no to? That makes sense?
Yes. Absolutely. Well, you have to pick and choose. Life is full of decisions to be made. And I find that the more willing you are to be more decisive, the easier it is to set a boundary or even to communicate that you have an expectation. I think sometimes we think in our own heads that these assumed expectations, even if they are just based off of basic human decency, at least you would think so,
Everybody doesn't have the same view of what basic human decency is.
right?
Everybody
See,
doesn't
that's
have the
exactly
same
what it
view of
is.
what
Everybody's
morality
perception
is.
is different.
Exactly.
So communicating that you have this is how you feel, this is why you feel that way. And I think setting a very clear expectation for how you want to be treated, even though these conversations are really difficult, sometimes they're, very emotional, sometimes they can escalate into something, that can be somewhat sketchy even, but the conversations that need to be had are going to be difficult. You cannot run away from them because these issues will chase you. And it's not going to just disappear off your back one day. You have to physically, spiritually, and mentally deal with what it is that's,
Well,
I don't know, bugging you.
communication
Hmm?
is a big part of any relationship. It is the best foundation for any relationship. You have to be able to communicate your expectations. And when someone communicates their expectations with you, you've got to be able to communicate whether or not that's acceptable so that you can
Hmm.
negotiate if there's a negotiable point.
Right.
I think one thing I've always had to tell myself, okay, one thing I've had to tell myself over and over a lot for a long time was that I could only control myself. I can only control my actions, my reactions. I don't have control over, because, my husband spent a lot of years teasing me about being a control freak, because I kind of am, but I have had to recognize that I don't have control over how other people behave, however people live their lives, however people react or act in my presence. And I've had to let go of that. And you can learn to let go of that control when A, you recognize you can only control yourself, and
Hmm.
B, you are clear in your communication of your expectations and your boundaries. Because if you have communicated clearly your expectations and your boundaries, you don't have to control somebody else, because what you're going to do when someone crosses that boundary is control how you react to it and step away and not give them the option to do them.
Right.
So, what's an expectation, if you can think of one, that you've had that may have been unreasonable that you've had to reevaluate? Think of one.
I think an unreasonable expectation that I have had in relationships, specifically for men that come into my life, is that when they present themselves to me as put together, most of the time that's not always the case. And not that I'm judging anyone for that. It's just, you get to learn somebody over time and you understand that they have vulnerabilities and weaknesses just as you do. So I've had to, well, also with my parents as well, reevaluate what I expect from someone else because it's not what I would do. And oftentimes I'll do a lot in a relationship. So sometimes I feel that I'm being maybe, I don't know, overlooked, even though, that may not always be the case because I feel like I'm doing a lot, but I'm not really expected to do a lot. So I'm putting those expectations on myself. And I had to understand why I was putting those expectations on myself because they were not things that were being placed on me by others. And it was something that I had to kind of really dissect and really figure out where it came from and meditate on the issue for, months
That's a
really.
huge
Because,
insight, though, because how many of us, and I know I'm just as guilty of that, place expectations on ourselves within any relationship that can be friendship, love, whatever,
right. Mm-hmm.
child to parent, parent to child, whatever. We place expectations on ourselves, and then it's not that those people expected that of us, we expected it, and then we perceive that they're upset about the fact that we're not meeting that expectation that they didn't even know existed.
Yes. Mm-hmm. The human brain is such an interesting place, isn't it?
Well, interesting, frightening. It depends on whose
Well,
human brain we're in. Because I mean, if you're in mine, probably a little scary. Just saying.
well, we all have dark places.
Well, and I think that's definitely something that we will talk about eventually. That shadow work, and that's visiting those dark places and figuring out how to integrate them into yourself. But that's a whole different story. Um,
Yeah.
I personally still struggle. I think my biggest problem, I could go with all kinds of expectations I've had have come and gone throughout my life. But the biggest one I'm struggling with now, I think, is, and I hope nobody takes this offensively because I was this person, by the way. So, with people who work in the service industry, I have an expectation that they're going to do their job and, and
Ouch.
not, how do I want to put this without being terribly offensive? And not, I don't even know what I want to say. I know that my expectation is that they're going to do their job. And the reason I have that expectation is because I used to work in these industries, and I know that several times I have watched people do things or heard people say things to me that I would have been fired for in a heartbeat.
Some people, man, it's
But then,
wild and crazy out there sometimes.
but then, and possibly I have slipped into this a bit, but then when you stand up for yourself, you're Karen. Now, I'm not. Like I will walk up to anybody and I have and often do. Oh my goodness, your necklace is so pretty. Oh my goodness, your earrings are so pretty. You have such a beautiful smile. You have such pretty hair because I want people to feel good about themselves. I will thank you and praise you when you have done right by me. That being
Yes,
said,
but that is only for people who know what it feels like to have to
deal with the other
depend on
side of
someone
me
else. Right, yes.
because the other side of me is this. And I said this to my husband today, as a matter of fact, because we're dealing with an issue with our health insurance. And so, my primary care physician, I am supposed to have a zero copay at my primary care physician.
Hmm.
The last two visits they have sent us bills for. And they're telling me that it's because we have a co-insurance. I have called my insurance company and they tell me that that does not exist. That is not true. My insurance company even called the doctor's office and had a discussion with them about it, and
Right.
made sure everything was kosher, made sure my doctor was still on my covered by my insurance, made sure all of these things. Then I called them because I got a bill in the mail and I thought, maybe it's just a mistake, maybe the calls happened after it had been sent out, these things happen. So I called, and the woman had no idea what I was talking about. Said that she had no notes on it about my insurance, that they can't resubmit it, but she would call the insurance company. What I said to my husband was this, and by the way, I've been super nice through all of this, even though my insurance company shut off my insurance saying that I had chosen to shut it off, which I never did, and I had to re sign up for my insurance. So that's a whole nother. But I've been nice through this whole thing. I haven't wigged out, I haven't yelled, I haven't flipped out, and this is I'm Guys, I told you I was going to start working on my anger. I am working on my anger, but boy, is the universe testing me. But I said to my husband today, I have done the nice side of the coin. They need to figure this out because the other side of me is coming out. If they call me and tell me that my insurance doesn't cover it, that that's what they've told me, that they get somebody's getting yelled at. I don't know who it's going to be. I haven't decided that yet, but the other side of me is coming out. And
Right.
so my expectation is that my insurance company and the people who bill my insurance company both can manage to do their jobs. If they cannot manage to do their jobs, I'm going to stand up for myself. The problem then becomes that I get angry. I have tried very hard to do this nice. I am going to get angry. It's just, I can see it coming. But
Right.
I feel like I deserve, especially with a service I'm paying for them to be able to do their job. Is that too high of an expectation? Am I asking too much here?
Now, to be fair,
And
but
I hate because I watch these videos and I see people labeled as Karens, and sometimes they really are kind of Karens. But sometimes I feel like it's people trying to stand up for themselves, to stand up for what they deserve, to stand up for their rights, and they still get labeled as
right.
Karens. So there's something that maybe we need to do is evaluate as a society what our expectations are, what our boundaries are, and when it's okay to stand up for myself.
Well, yeah, it depends on the crowd that you're in. Because if the people who are around you truly care about you, they wouldn't allow that kind of behavior towards you, and they would cheer you if you stand up for yourself, if that's your choice. However, sometimes we are often in maybe not healthy environments for ourselves when these situations occur. So,
It depends on
you
where
have
you
to,
live too, I think, because depending on what state you live in, it's seen differently. Depends on where you live, not just who you're around.
well, yeah, I think geographical location is important because it has something to do with the culture that you're surrounded with. But still, the principles are things that last and stand the test of time because I think that they're imbued with realities that are inherently good. And what I mean by that is if you live your life with dignity, with respect, with honesty, with integrity, with love and kindness and compassion and respect for others, and it's the way that you want to be treated as well, and you make that clear, your life becomes something you can be proud of, which kind of kills a lot of the negativity that life will present itself or will present to you while living.
That's very,
So,
very true. I think that when you choose, remember that everything is a choice. And earlier you said you actually brought up something about choice, and I meant to comment on it and forgot, but everything is a choice. And every choice has a repercussion. It may be good, maybe bad, but
mhm,
they exist for every choice. When you accept the choices that you make and learn from the choices, you can move forward in a more positive manner every single time. When you deny or live in denial about the fact that you've made a choice, and by the way, sometimes not making a choice is still making a choice. When you live in
Mm-hmm.
denial, we both know that from experience, I'm sure. Sometimes, though, when we live in denial about making these choices and we don't accept the the fact that we chose it and the repercussions are ours and we must own them, we can't learn from them. We can't move forward. And so that goes for boundaries, expectations. That goes for every piece of this that we'll be talking about. Choice is everything, communication is
Mm-hmm.
key. And when you learn to adjust your expectations, which is what I'm working on again now with my anger issues, and you guys are going to hear me talk a lot about this over the next, I don't know how long it's going to take, but I'm working on it, I
However
promise.
long it takes,
It takes
yes.
what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're able to accept that you've made choices and learn to reevaluate and readjust those expectations, you can start to live in more peace. Then summer is all about the time that my husband and I both managed to find inner peace at the same time. It really is. How that happened, I'll never know, but it did. And
That's
it's
good.
it's about finding it again. It's about knowing how to do that. And adjusting expectations, well, that's just part of what we have to do.
Yes. It's a step in the process for sure.
So we didn't get to talk about everything that I wanted to talk about with expectations, but I think this was a really good conversation. We have come to the end of our time. We are coming back next week to talk about some more movement and or exercise. We're going to be talking about it in the mindset of how that can reduce stress and anxiety. Apparently, I have a little of that, so it'll be a good conversation. But we're going
Don't we all?
to. So for now, we're going to end this, and we will see you again next time. If you'd like to show support for Zen Summer, the hosts, and the information that we're sharing, you can visit us on ko-fi.com/Zen Summer. That's ko-fi.com/Zen Summer. And until next time, we wish for all of you, if not a Zen summer, then at least a Zen moment or two.